Described by some as a hero, a marked man, and by others a criminal, a terrorist. The case of Wikileaks and its director Julian Assange has had a profound effect on the world. In Melbourne last Friday, over 1,000 people packed Federation Square's BMW Edge building and the square itself to hear Liberty Victoria's public forum on Wikileaks and free speech. The forum featured the director of Wikileaks, Julian Assange's first address to a public forum since the leaks concerning the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as speeches from Julian Assange's UK and Australian lawyers, Christopher Warren of the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, Greens MP for Melbourne, Adam Bandt, public interest solicitor Lizzie O'Shea, and lawyer Peter Gordon. Chair of the evening and President of Liberty Victoria, Professor Spencer Zifcak, set the tone of the evening's presentations in his introduction, contending that the director of Wikileaks has broken no laws anywhere, and that in the last 6 months no country has been able to lay any charges against Assange. Professor Zifcak termed the reaction to Wikileaks as being the most tremendous free speech issue of our time. In her address to the forum, Assange's Australian lawyer in London, Jennifer Robinson, who is a part of the Wikileaks director's legal team, highlighted what she considers to be the positive effects of Wikileaks whilst challenging the validity of the charges against Assange.
Well, it's with great pleasure that next you'll find Melbourne, Julian's hometown and Wikileaks' hometown, just days after Wikileaks has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for its work in promoting peace by holding governments accountable for their actions through the disclosure of information. Wikileaks' publication of US cables revealing Ben Ali's corruption and nepotism in Tunisia is said to have contributed to the protests and the Jasmine Revolution which saw him removed. In Egypt, Wikileaks cables demonstrated that torture was widespread and accepted police practice. In recognition of this work, earlier this week the Sydney Peace Foundation awarded Julian its prestigious Human Rights Award. Previous recipients of the award include Nelson Mandela and the Dalai Lama. In my opinion, all Australians ought to be proud of our latest homegrown Nobel Peace Prize nominee. And yet, despite these international accolades and achievements, both Julian and Wikileaks are constantly accused of illegal activity.
Jennifer Robinson speaking there. Robinson noted the recent change of leadership in Tunisia and the evidence shown by Wikileaks of Indonesian military abuse against the indigenous Papuan population as some of the positive work that Wikileaks has done. She then compares the actions of Wikileaks to the words of US Vice President Joe Biden.
At the time we had joked, what kind of a world is this that we live in, when the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, is quick to accuse Julian Assange of being a high-tech terrorist, and yet is reluctant to call Mubarak a dictator.
Robinson went on to muse that Assange might be the first political asylum seeker from Australia if the Australian government does not support him. She also challenged the way in which the case was being handled by the Swedish.
Our investigations have shown that the prosecutor has ignored key exculpatory evidence in her possession and refused to disclose to us that evidence. She has rejected his voluntary offer of cooperation and instead sought an arrest warrant that has been kept in solitary confinement and under house arrest. This has caused great disturbance in his work for Wikileaks, of course. We will be arguing in court next week that the prosecutor has abused the European arrest warrant system. Julian has, of course, continually offered to cooperate with these investigations. Both in Sweden, he stayed in Sweden for more than a month in order to clear his name, and subsequent to that time, since being in London, we have offered on numerous occasions to answer the questions of the prosecutor via video links from the Australian Embassy, from Scotland Yard, and through other means. The prosecutor has alleged that she is prevented from doing so by Swedish law, but we have proven in the past months that this is an absolute nonsense, and that she could have used mutual legal assistance. Instead, she opted for an arrest warrant that has seen him kept in solitary confinement and under house arrest.
In his pre-recorded piece, filmed from the estate in the UK where he is under house arrest, Julian Assange talked of what he sees Wikileaks as doing, providing for transparent power, not transparent people.
We support a cause that is no more radical a proposition than that the citizenry has a right to scrutinise the state. The state has asserted its authority by surveilling, monitoring and regimenting all of us, all the while hiding behind cloaks of security and opaqueness. Surely it was only a matter of time before citizens pushed back and we asserted our rights.
Assange also commented on the importance of the release of information which is of public interest.
It is surely a matter of public interest that Australian politicians secretly brief foreign embassies, in effect providing them with political intelligence on the Australian government, while concealing these vital facts from those who actually elected them to office. Wikileaks has brought this important information to the public. It is surely a matter of public interest that the US Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, has been running a secret intelligence campaign directed at the leadership of the United Nations, demanding passwords, DNA, personal encryption keys, credit card numbers, email addresses, and so on. That targeting is illegal under the 1946 UN Convention on Privileged Communities and illegal under the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And it is surely a matter of public interest that the Labor government has been secretly working to shield from prosecution Indonesian military figures who have killed Australian journalists in East Timor. Wikileaks brought this information out to the public as well.
And that was an extract of Julian Assange's pre-prepared speech. Federal Secretary of the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, Christopher Warren, focused on the importance of the issues surrounding the response to WikiLeaks.
Because this issue is about free speech and its companion arm, freedom of the press. Right now we see how critical that issue is as we see our friends and colleagues, first in Tunisia and now in Egypt, confront the challenges of reporting freely of dictatorship.
Warren went on to highlight that Laurie Oakes won a Gold Walkley, the top award in Australian journalism, for publishing information that he gained from leaks. He also explained that there are more than 500 secrecy clauses in the statutes of the federal and state governments in Australia. Continuing a consistent message of the evening's presentations, Warren said,
"But in a democracy, information is held by the government in trust on behalf of the people. And it is we the people who have the right to be informed."
Federal MP for the seat of Melbourne, Adam Bandt, Assange's local member, discussed the role of the Australian government in Assange's case and what he believed should have been the response of the government.
In the initial days of the WikiLeaks revelations, the government sponsors, the senior members of the political establishment here and abroad, spoke volumes about the current state of our democracy. Here we had an Australian citizen who had not been charged, let alone convicted, of any crime relating to released information. Here was someone whose lawyers had written several months ago to the Australian Federal Police, putting themselves on the record saying, if you need to speak to Julian Assange about anything, you have concerns that he's broken any law, get in touch, and of course there was no contact. And here was someone who had done no more and make available to the public the things that were being said and done in their name. We had people calling him terrorists. We had people who wanted to be the President of the United States of America, calling for him to be hunted down and executed. In such a situation, a straight application of the rule of law, or indeed the simple words that you find on the inside of your passport when you go home that promises the Australian government will look after you when you're overseas, should have seen our government calling for his protection, reminding people that he was innocent until proven guilty.
Bandt said that he was worried about this case, making a comparison between it and former Australian Prime Minister John Howard and former American President George Bush's treatment of Australian David Hicks. Adam Bandt also requested that the Prime Minister guarantee Assange's safety and a swift return home to Melbourne.
He may be ready to get on a plane and come back within a matter of days. Mr. Assange has asked for this promise, and you've heard him speak that promise tonight. And as his local MP, I am now asking the Prime Minister more on his behalf.
I caught up with Mr. Bandt shortly after the forum.
You mentioned several times your commitment to, and the Greens' commitment to spreading free speech in Australia. How do you plan to progress that in federal parliament?
Well, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that the whistleblower protection laws, when they pass through the Senate, are broadened to ensure that people who are involved in online journalism, like Wikileaks, are entitled to protection, that kind of protection. Secondly, we've been at the forefront of a campaign against the internet filter, which in and of itself is quite a strong restriction on free speech, I think. And thirdly, I think in a very practical way, we'll continue to stand up for people like Julian Assange and for organisations like Wikileaks that find themselves guilty of nothing more than embarrassing a government by releasing information that people actually want to hear. And I think having parliamentary representatives who will stand up for those basic principles is more important now than ever.
You mentioned you're trying to get that it's embarrassing the government. Are you finding much support for Green causes within the Labour Party, which you are in a form of alliance in federally?
Well, look, the Labor Party's in government, and we're not in an alliance with them as such. We're supporting them being in government as opposed to the others, the opposition. Look, I think there's growing support, and I think that every opinion poll comes back with strong endorsement of what WikiLeaks and Assange has done, and I would expect that within both of the other political parties in Parliament, in major political parties, there would be people there who would be supportive as well. And I note that, rather belatedly, but importantly, the Foreign Minister came out and said we shouldn't be talking about cancelling his passport, he's innocent until proven guilty. That was good, but it was a bit too little too late.
The views of members seem to be quite divided on the issue. Would you support a private member's bill on the issue of free speech in Australia?
Well, we've been calling for a Charter of Rights and a Human Rights Act for some time, and that would, of course, include guarantees of free speech. We've been calling for that to be enshrined in legislation. We haven't been getting much support.
Melbourne public interest solicitor Lizzie O'Shea focused on what she saw as the real effects of WikiLeaks and of the internet in general on society.
Now, there's a lot of silly things being said about what's going on in the Arab world. We're told that what's happening in Tunisia is a WikiLeaks revolution, and what's going on in Egypt is a Twitter revolution. Well, quite clearly, they're not. It's a revolution of the people of Egypt and Tunisia, and it belongs to them. It belongs to those people who are going out on the streets and fighting for their freedom. The internet has opened a world of opportunities for the democratic spread of information, and WikiLeaks has a very important role to play in this process. It feeds crucial information into this framework and allows us to see the realities of politics. So to defend WikiLeaks is to defend a free press, and to defend WikiLeaks is to defend democracy.
Also speaking at the forum was Peter Gordon, former senior partner of the law firm Slater & Gordon, where he worked with both Prime Minister Julia Gillard and Attorney General Robert McLennan, and the present principal of Gordon Legal. Gordon focused on the criticism of the way in which WikiLeaks handles information. He compared the recent leaks to Watergate, defending the practical application of the leaks, and claiming that the leaks weren't just about the release of information, but that WikiLeaks satisfied the requirements of what he described as responsible leaking.
Now, are these crimes made out by these revelations? Of course not. Of course they are not. But neither was Watergate, when the character known as Zifcak first began to leak information to the journalists Woodward and Bernstein. No whistleblowing information ever reaches that standard when it's first released, for the very reason that those impugned are entitled to the presumption of innocence and a fair trial. But imagine what might have happened if someone had said to Zifcak, when those revelations about the criminal conduct of the President of the United States were first being communicated, you're just putting information out there.
Gordon also contended that Assange had not violated any Australian laws, as he was the publisher and not the leaker of the information, as is required for a prosecution.
The demonisation of Julian Assange and the information WikiLeaks has disclosed is almost totally unsupported. In fact, it is totally unsupported by the publication so far of any material which might credibly be said to constitute a breach of national security or of any country's national interest as opposed to the personal interest of politicians. It's also important, I think, to stress that the Prime Minister's formulation of what constitutes a sufficient calumny to justify publication, as is stated in Watergate standards, is not the legal position in Australia any more than it is sensible public policy. In Australia, provided the publisher of the material has not themselves been involved in criminal activity to obtain the information, there's no criminal sanction involved.
Gordon noted what he saw as a need for proper legal representation for anonymous whistleblowing in courts for documents of legitimate public concern. This is in response to claims of documents being unnecessarily classified under many secrecy clauses, including national interest. I talked to Peter Gordon shortly after he spoke.
Okay, you delivered a very passionate speech that has criticised...
What can I get, like, highly intelligent or something like that?
Highly intelligent and passionate. Which you, although acknowledging your deep friendship with
No, I didn't say friendship.
Sorry, your previous experience and...
She's been a work colleague,
yeah,
and she's been a partner.
All right.
And I have great admiration for her, and I'm very proud of what she's achieved. But I think her position on this is wrong.
Have you tried to communicate that in any way?
Well, only in the public statements that I've made.
All right, thank you.
I also spoke with chairperson of the evening and president of Liberty Victoria, Professor Zifcak.
It's a very impressive turnout today. Do you know roughly how many figures? Do you know any figures on roughly how many people have turned out to this event?
More than 1,000 came to the event this evening, so it's one of the largest public meetings held in Melbourne in the last few years.
So you're happy with the turnout?
I'm very happy with the turnout. We gave notice of this meeting only about 5 days ago, mainly through social media, and to get an attendance of 1,000 people is simply illustrative of how important the issues that we discussed this evening are.
So you found a lot of support in on online communities and that. Have you had much? Have you had many other responses, like many other responses outside of the online area, or that have not been supportive of the event?
We've not had any people saying to us that they're not supportive of the event, and nobody during the course of this evening's meeting expressed any reservations about it. Now, there may be people who would not support the event or would not support what was being said here, but I've not heard of them.
Do you have any personal words that you'd like to, if you met Assange himself, you'd wish to communicate with him?
Well, Julian Assange at the moment is under the threat, particularly from the United States and to a lesser extent Sweden and Australia, of prosecution for certain criminal offences. Now, those offences have not been identified, but my message to him would be not to back down in the face of threats which, in the end, I, as a lawyer, believe have no substance.
Thank you.
I'm William Coolidge, reporting for One Cuckoo Short of a Nest.
OneCuckooNest.com